TNT Sports, you and the gang on 41 years of NBA coverage. We really appreciate that. To the Golden State Warriors, Joe Lacob, Peter Guber, thank you for being such fantastic hosts. And to the Bay Area, the city of San Francisco, Mayor Laurie, thank you. We've had a fantastic time here.
Yeah.
But now, to present the All-Star Trophy to Team Shaq OGs. Let's go.
Yeah.
Dame, let me ask you a question. As you guys win this thing,
I'm sorry, guys.
Give me your assessment of the way things have changed, the way we did the All-Star
Episode
games this year.
135, Clippers Talk.
What your take was.
I think they're just looking for a more competitive game and trying to find ways to create that. And I thought tonight was, a little bit more competitive than it had been the last few years, but I think that's the number one thing. So just to provide that entertainment, a little bit of competitiveness on the floor, and I thought it was a little bit more of that tonight.
Appreciate you very much. Adam, let's
there
let's
wasn't
get to
a way.
the next bit of hardware, shall we?
The problem is
in fact,
the games were so short.
The right traffic here so
when they got good, when they were
happy.
competitive, then they were over.
The Kobe Bryant Trophy as the MVP of the All-Star Game. Tonight's Kia NBA All-Star Game MVP will be presented by Kia America's Vice President of Marketing, Russell Wager. Kia America will be donating a 2025.
Welcome into Clippers Talk. I'm Adam Osland. 135 straight episodes as I'm monitoring the end of the All-Star Game that has mercifully come to an end with a format and amount of interruptions that were just baffling.
On this floor go to Steph Curry.
Yeah. Steph won in San Francisco. Shocking. He did hit a half-court shot in the final game for the OGs. I got a lot to get into about this. I just figured we'd watch the end of this. Kevin Hart's still trying. I think he got booed. The crowd seems confused at what they have just watched. The amount of winging it that has gone on at this All-Star game with the
it is indeed
fluctuating format and just the intermissions they've had between games, in games.
It is indeed fitting that would happen here in front of the home folks on this night. What makes that so special for you?
Yeah, it's just a celebration of a lot of great things happening in basketball. To be playing with these guys for as long as we have, it's obviously our responsibility to come out and put on the show, and I thank them for helping me do that in Golden State, because a lot of histories happen out here, but the competition and the camaraderie and the legacies that we all create is what it's all about. So I'm happy to be a part of that celebration.
Ask him about the format.
8-second violation, huh?
Yeah. I didn't know the rules. My bad.
Steph,
they called 8 seconds on him late.
Been great watching you all these years, and it was certainly a pleasure tonight to watch you.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Shaq, have you donated your hat to Kevin Hart now?
We got to stop the jokes.
Steph, congratulations.
Stop the riffing,
baby. It's what it is. Ernie, keep it going. Keep it going. The energy is great, man.
They're just winging it. Have some structure.
We are thrilled to have been a part of it again this year. Thank you very much, San Francisco, for everything. Thanks for the hospitality. Thanks for showing up tonight. It's been a blast. So the OGs.
It's a sparse crowd.
I
think I'm hearing some boos.
All-Star Game, and Stephen Curry wins the 20.
This was pretty much an unmitigated disaster, guys. The only thing that would make it worse is if they made the winner of the All-Star Game decide home court advantage in the NBA Finals. We're not doing that. No Bud Selig. We're not doing that. You don't let teams that fight all season long have their home field or home court decided by a freaking All-Star Game. Do not do it. Do not overcompensate like that. Yanni Tears is in another world. TNT has always been a bit amateurish, but that also makes it fun. Did you find tonight's production fun? You're alone on that one. I'm Adam Osland, and this is Clippers Talk. Appreciate you guys. I just wanted to catch the end of that there and see if Adam Silver said anything interesting about, this was a rousing success, or I think we're going to stick with this format, or anything like that after what we just saw with the All-Star game that was in the background, the basketball. Somebody's going to pull the numbers on how much basketball there actually was over the last 3 hours. I know people complain about too many commercials often. This was different. This was, we're celebrating the TNT guys after the game just started. One team's up 11-1, and we're just going to take the next 10 minutes at least with commercials wrapped around it to talk about TNT's legacy with NBA, inside the NBA. Disaster. I don't know who put that rundown together. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. That was as frustrating of an event, I would say, that I've watched in NBA history. Like, there's bad All-Star games, and then there's bad formatting wrapped around some decent basketball that was being played. There was some defense out there at times. There was some cool shots, but the format kind of destroyed it all. As soon as the game was getting interesting, it was over. And having all the music and the sidebars and that TNT trophy presentation or ring celebrate, whatever they gave the guys, right after the game had just started, it was so awkward. It was so poorly produced. What were they thinking? I love the modern game. I love the NBA. This was so disappointing what just happened. Exactly. McNuggets saying it. The game felt so short. They were. How did they not think that first to 40, when teams score, like if there's 10 games in the NBA that night, multiple teams are scoring 40 points in a quarter. And they put 40 points as the target score to get to. Even in the final game of the tournament, the championship game between Shaq's team and Chuck's team, it was still 40. A game that was so far in the background behind all the other stuff going on. I mean, the amount of basketball we got versus commercials and interludes and the Beast $100,000 shootout that took forever and then almost paid off, kind of. What was that? They actually had a decent basketball product going on, and they butchered it. The guys were actually kind of doing their part, but the format was so terrible with all the downtime in between games and then during the final game to celebrate TNT, to pat them on the back for the millionth time. A show that's not even going anywhere. It's just going to ESPN. The same guys are going to be there. Whose idea was this? This was shockingly bad. This was parody. I felt like the guys who were out there, the players making up the game that they're supposed to be celebrating, did their part, but the NBA fumbled everything else with it. They wanted guys to compete harder. They did. But the games were just so short. And they were sliced up between excruciatingly long commercials and stoppages in play. That was wild. So, let's review what just happened today, because it starts with this. LeBron announced that he wasn't playing in the game like an hour before they started. Hour before the first game tipped off. That was shocking. Nobody knew about that. And the timing of it, with LeBron being out because of his ankle and releasing that information there, I guess he was day to day. If you're day to day for the All-Star game, you just got to be out, because somebody else can take your spot. We've already had guys with Anthony Davis being out, reserves being called up. It was Kyrie Irving. Why did that get released so late, that LeBron James was out right before the game started? I have a theory on why that is. And then Anthony Edwards doesn't play for his team. I think he was on Kenny's team with the young guys. He's out with a groin injury. That comes out after they play that first game, as TNT is now replaying the whole thing. They just loop it. I think there are a couple of guys that could have been all-stars in this game, including our own Norman Powell. Why did that information come out so late? LeBron and Ant were both out. So put in guys who are healthy and available. If it's at all up in the air whether or not you're going to play, just give up your spot. Norm might never have a chance to become an all-star again. To have a year like this was probably his best chance. And I saw this number earlier from Shane Young at Young NBA, showing that there have been 50 individual seasons in NBA history where a player has averaged 24 plus points per game on a 63% true shooting or better, and 49 of those guys were all-stars. The only person that hasn't been, who has put up those numbers, is Norman Powell. So don't tell me he wasn't deserving. Easily could have been in this game. So why do I think it wasn't announced earlier from LeBron or Ant? Because they thought that would kill some of the buzz going into the weekend. If you knew right away that LeBron wasn't going to be playing in the game. Is that a good enough excuse? No, probably not. But I think that would, put a damper on things. Knowing heading in, LeBron's already going to be out. So they waited to announce it an hour before the game started. Same with Anthony Edwards. After the game started and he didn't play, and then everybody wondered why. Oh, he's out with the groin issue. They wanted eyeballs to tune in. And if it came out that LeBron James was not going to be playing 2 days ago, then the ratings would be even worse. That's the reasoning. But it costed Norm or Sabonis an all-star spot. Does that seem fair? Hey, somebody coming in here and saying Norman Powell doesn't move nobody to watch the All-Star game. sometimes there's a thing called merit and being deserving of a spot. And I think it's bigger than just the ratings. If you're going to have any credibility with what it means to be an all-star or to being voted in, Norm Powell deserved to be one of those next guys up if somebody was going to be out. He easily could have been in over J-Dub to begin with. I can make that argument easily. He's the only guy that has had a season like this and not been an all-star ever. So part of the reason he doesn't have as much name recognition is because he's not in the game. This would have helped him. Would have been big for his brand. Understand the grind. It's weak, man. I get it. LeBron is one of the biggest global stars ever. And if they had to keep this thing quiet and not give away that he wasn't going to be playing till an hour beforehand, I could see that being the reason why. But man, that's got to sting for Norm or Sabonis. Those are the two top guys that would have taken his spot. And there's two guys out from the West with him and Anthony Edwards. So there's two spots open right there. But Anthony Edwards is being put on the fast track for being the next guy, maybe. So things got off to a rocky start, to say the least. I had no idea LeBron was going to be missing it. That the information was nowhere to be found. And I know people are like comparing him to MJ because of this. MJ would never do this. I don't care about any of that stuff. I get prioritizing the Lakers over the All-Star game, and you think you can make a run this season, and therefore you're not going to play. You want more time to heal. Fine. Put somebody else in. Give up your spot. Because that likely would have meant the world to Norm or Sabonis. And yeah, I'm frustrated by it. Now, the game, which was far in the background compared to everything else going on, they're celebrating the game. The entire weekend is built around a game that they end up putting in the background for artists, musicians. Cool. But I want all that stuff too. I want to see E40 and Too Short. But you can't have the game. It felt like we got maybe 40 minutes of basketball in those 3 games tonight. Maybe. In 3 games. You still have to make the main thing the main thing. I can't believe how poorly that was done. Because the guys kind of showed up. There was more defense. There were a few blocks early on. Everybody was noticing. The OGs didn't want to lose to the Rising Stars team, and I get what Draymond Green's saying about that. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, this comment from Carter saying there was no flow to any of the games. There wasn't. The idea of having 3 mini games to me initially felt like something where the NBA was going, okay, if we got 3 games, one of them's bound to be really good. And the best one was probably the second one. Definitely was the second one. Where the OGs could not get embarrassed by the Rising Stars, and they played hard enough, and it was somewhat close. And they messed around and almost found out late as they were going for that kill shot 3, and eventually Dame hit it. But this was an all-star weekend where they forgot what they were celebrating. They lost the plot. They missed the entire point. We're there because of basketball. So let's actually prop up the basketball game. Not have it feel like it was, I don't know, one quarter basketball that we saw tonight. That was wild to me. Who thought 40 points would be a good target score? You have teams doing that in a quarter all the time in the NBA. And there's bound to be less defense being played in this game, so they're going to get there pretty quick. Somebody's going to run the numbers on everything else going on in the broadcast that happened over the last 3 hours versus the actual on-court time of the games being played. 3 games. And it's not going to be pretty. There was way too much, as I see people in here talking about it, of, hey, we got Kevin Hart. Oh, let's get him next to Chuck, now next to Shaq, now next to Ernie. Have him crack some jokes. The best one was probably the porn joke, and it was probably inappropriate for that setting, considering the All-Star Game is supposed to be for kids, saying Shaq looked like a porn director. Outside of that, it was a lot of unscripted winging it that didn't work. You know, they're not SNL 50 that I'm going to be watching a little bit later. Kevin Hart, he's hit and miss with me sometimes. But the other problem is, like, the game's going on, and I'm watching the first game, and it's Chuck's team versus Kenny's team. Why aren't they mic'd up? They're the GMs. Mic them up so they can talk crap to one another while the game's going on. Mic up Shaq with Parker. Mic up at the end, Chuck with Shaq. Have them talking trash. That would make sense to me. Instead, they have Reggie Miller and whoever's team isn't out there talking. Like, they have the coaches typically mic'd up. Like, you saw Barry Bonds and Jerry Rice, who were the coaches for the celebrity game. Do that with Chuck and Shaq while their teams are playing. That would be much more entertaining. While having the play-by-play man, Brian Anderson, actually doing play-by-play, the majority of the time, they're not even talking about what's happening on the court. Like, it was crazy. When they came back after the TNT thing, with them winning that Lifetime Achievement Award or whatever it was, that took up damn near, it might have been 12 minutes. They had commercials on both ends. They went to a commercial, they came back, they celebrated them, then they went to a commercial, then they went back to the game. It took forever. The game had started. That's dangerous for athletes to start and stop like that, then start again. Who thought that through? What were they thinking? But they come back and guys are hitting shots and they're talking about what's Steph Curry's greatest attribute outside of his shooting or whatever. It's like, can we call the game happening right now? The game that's actually happening instead of getting to some hot take? There is a game going on. We are here for the game going on. Talk about the game that's happening. It doesn't make sense. What were they doing? I don't understand it. East versus West. The one thing that would, and I've been talking about this for 15 years, and most people have, been talking about this since the early 2000s with the international invasion going on. The one format that could work, yes, Team USA versus the world. The problem is you get an even enough amount of players on each side. How do you do that? Like, Donovan Mitchell was playing for the international team in this one. I don't think he's from Canada or anything. I know SGA was on that team because there's just an extra guy there. He's got to be on this team too. It has not always been a circus to this level. There was some standardization. There are some low effort plays out there, but it's slowly eroded and has gotten worse and worse. I've gone back and watched older All-Star games where I see like an intentional foul in the first quarter to not give up a free layup. That's different than what we see now. Now, I'm not even knocking this game for the on-court product so much. It's everything that was wrapped around it. It's the format. It's all the interludes, the huge stoppages in play between shortened games that are only going to 40. So those stoppages feel more consequential. It feels like it took forever. It feels like we went to a commercial fest and a basketball game broke out. What's the old, I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out line? Like, are our expectations too high? I'm not even knocking the on-court product here. I get what you're saying, Toby. If you go back, there's always been bad all-star games. There have always been games where there's too much flash and too little competitiveness. There has to be some balance. It's not easy. But I felt like the games weren't so bad. The way they unveiled them, the format they put them in was problematic. They had to fill time. Okay, they had to fill time while a game was going on. I don't think Toby knows what he's talking about, guys. They had to fill time. They started the last game. It's 11-1. Chuck's team calls a timeout. They come back, and the next 12 to 15 minutes are them celebrating the TNT guys with commercials on both sides. What do you mean they had to fill time? That didn't work. They stopped the game. They could have done it before the game. They could have done it after the game. They had just done the Too Short E40 musical interlude between, I think, the second and third game, which I liked. But the games are so shortened with these mini games, everything else took precedent over the actual basketball game, which is the reason they're there in the first place. Y'all in Tears has to be a troll. Maybe they need to do some fun bet, so like the losers have to get pies in the face or something. I kind of get where you're going with that after reading it. Sorry, Toby. I couldn't understand what you were saying then. Terry, I think James was tired about this game as well. Everybody was expecting that he will pass the ball to Curry. Instead, he said, let's get out of here and pass the ball for a dunk. Guys, that's kind of a sidebar comment. There were two instances where Kevin Hart's trying to make jokes about Shea, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is just like, let's go, check ball, let's play, let's actually play basketball. And then while they're doing the TNT thing, Jaylen Brown is going, let's get back to the game, guys, let's go here. They've lost the plot. The entire reason you're there is to celebrate the game of basketball, and it was anything but the actual game. And the product was actually decent at times tonight. It's just, again, Toby, you're still not getting it. You're still not getting it. They did not need to fill during the game, do the TNT celebration after the game had already started. You don't start and stop with athletes like that. That's dangerous. Some producer had no idea what they were doing. To just mid-game turn it into, hey, let's talk about TNT some more. Like Jaylen Brown, Jaylen Brown was going, let's go. We have to play. Why is this still going on? Ernie, do you want to say something? Okay, Chuck, you want to say? Okay, Shaq. Okay, Kenny. Okay, great. Have these guys not been celebrated enough? Do they not have like documentaries about the greatness of inside the NBA on TNT? Like, they're not dying. They're going to ESPN. The players were annoyed. Like, they're lucky Damian Lillard was being kind at the end when Ernie asked him what he thought of the format. Draymond Green blew it up pre-game, after the first game, after the second game. His main gripe was he didn't feel like guys from the Rising Stars should be playing on Sunday. Sunday is about the All-Stars. He didn't feel like they earned that. And he hated the format because it shortens the amount of time out there. So guys, if they're trying to chase records in the All-Star game, like the scoring record, I think it's held by Kobe Bryant, most points scored in an All-Star game, but you're getting less time out there on the court because of the format, first to 40. It's such a convoluted mess. There's so many things that were wrong. But the main point is, put the spotlight on the damn basketball, because there are actually some good plays out there when they weren't being obscured by broadcasters talking about something completely different, like Shaq talking about Bol again because he can't take the damn L, because obviously Victor Wembanyama is infinitely better, and Shaq for some time was saying Bol was just as good. He doesn't see a difference between him and Victor Wembanyama. That's how you know, like, just because you played the game doesn't mean you know the game. Just because you played the game doesn't mean you can talk the game. Those are all different things. Playing the game, talking the game, knowing the game. Shaq is clueless and just dying on that hill. But, like, Wemby's out there blocking Cade Cunningham, and Shaq's talking about a player that's not an all-star, that's not in the game. Distracting from what we actually should be celebrating. That's a disaster. Yeah, I'm not big on the all-star game records argument either. But there is something to having a standardized format. Like, I don't like how they keep switching up the skills competition when they used to have a format that was good. Guys would participate, big names, Kobe, Wade, Steve Nash, against each other, and it worked. And for no reason, they changed it up. Because I liked comparing, okay, this guy 1 year on the same obstacle course made it through in this time versus the guy this year who's done the best in this event. I hate the evolving and always changing, rotating scoring systems and rules and formats. I understand they can go stale at times, but if you have a really good one, it shouldn't. Zio said the beginning of the final game was competitive, even though Chuck's team was bricking. Then after that 30-minute timeout, the game just died. They sucked the energy out of the building by doing this freaking TNT. Pat yourself on the back. A celebration of TNT on TNT. We get it, guys. You're the greatest. Even though they're celebrating guys who all they do is hate on the modern game and don't watch the game and have to play games like who he play for, because they admit it all the time that they don't watch full games. Or Chuck will, not so discreetly be like, hey, I actually watched this game this time. Their job is to be analysts. I get they're very entertaining. They're very funny. And like I said, I would have had Chuck and Shaq mic'd up, talking back and forth while their teams are playing one another in the All-Star game. That would have been good entertainment while still having play-by-play. Like, there are ways to do this, but they can't figure it out. There are ways to improve this thing. They really can't figure it out. And to start off with LeBron not playing, and he probably knew he wasn't playing and couldn't give up his spot because the NBA didn't want to announce a couple of days ago that LeBron wouldn't be playing because that would have hurt them with ratings and eyeballs. Great. I get you have to think about that, but man, that is a tough blow to somebody like Norman Powell or Domantas Sabonis, because you had two guys out in LeBron and Anthony Edwards, and LeBron, by the way, couldn't even put on the jumpsuit or look like the team pictures where he's just in casual attire, and everybody else on the OG's team is in a jersey. Like, you couldn't even put the jersey on. You couldn't do any of that stuff. For posterity's sake, two guys are out. There are two clear all-star replacements, Norman Powell and Sabonis. So I'm going to recommend some changes to the format coming up here, but I just want to go through the series of events that happened to lead to this all-star failure. It has to be. I don't know if this is a joke. Nico, my cousin, is here, said we need 30 minutes of Chuck's side plots next year. It's like they were doing anything but celebrating the actual game that has them there in the first place. They were really trying to put the actual basketball game in the background. And there may have been times where you wanted to do that if you have something better. They didn't. And the games and the play, the product on the court was actually decent. There were a lot of blocks. There were some good defensive plays out there. Wemby came to play. You know, he blocked Cade, and then Cade later dunked and looked back at him as he blew by him. And they're talking about something else on the broadcast. I don't understand. I don't understand how they could. I get trying something new, and maybe they'll say, "Hey, we swung and missed. We tried." The problem is they had a little bit of something. Like, maybe if the target score was 60 or 80, the games would have worked. But when it's 40 and it goes by so fast and everything else is taking so long to get to the game, then the game's done in the blink of an eye. It's like, what is the priority here? Are we celebrating basketball or something? What is going on? I wonder if there's anything more that's going to come out with LeBron. And other people bringing up how even if they knew that LeBron wasn't going to play, and maybe LeBron didn't tell them till it was too late. If they did know early on, could they have kept it quiet enough while telling Norman Powell, be on standby? We got you. You're going to play. We just don't want to tell the world that LeBron James is out yet. Could they have done that? Could they have kept it quiet enough? I don't know. Did LeBron even tell them? I don't know. So there's two people you could blame. Like, if you think LeBron didn't even alert the league that he wasn't going to play, then yeah, it could look selfish on his part for not opening up his spot for somebody else if he knew he was going to be out. And he could say, look, you can say he was thinking about it, or It was a game time decision. Come on. If it's up in the air, you're probably not playing. Just if there's any doubt that you might not play, then just take the day off. That's fine. But open up your spot for somebody else. That would have meant a lot to. Black Logic is saying LeBron found out just how silly that format was and said, I'm out. Well, part of the reason they're trying to change the format is because they believe guys over the last 10, 15 years haven't taken it seriously enough, so they're finding ways to make it more interesting. I think, a lot of guys have a responsibility and accountability for this. Like when Draymond Green is complaining about why are you having guys from the Rising Stars playing on the All-Star court on Sunday? They haven't earned that. Well, as Chuck pointed out, they're trying to throw these different tricks and fidget with the format or fiddle with the format because you guys didn't make the games good enough. So now we're trying to change it. So don't be mad because you had a responsibility to make the All-Star game more competitive over the years. So we didn't get to this point of trying Rising Stars versus All-Stars on Sunday. Yeah, I'm pretty sure LeBron knew he wasn't going to play. The question is, did the league know? If the league knew, then what? They just kept it quiet because they didn't want people to tune out, knowing they had all this promotion with LeBron James in it. And then it's pretty anticlimactic if he's not available. And if you tell them that 2 days before the event starts, nobody's going to tune in because they already know LeBron's out. That's business. I understand that. But if they knew that, they still could have said, Norman Powell, keep it quiet. You're going to play in the game. We just don't want it to get out yet until an hour before tip-off. That's when we'll announce the replacements. That's what's frustrating to me. There was different ways to handle this. Now, if LeBron didn't tell the league, then there's nothing they could really do. They couldn't get Norm in. Then it's more on LeBron. Like, really? You knew you were going to be out. Why not give up your spot to Sabonis or Norman Powell, or just tell the league they can do it? Announce who that player is. I get it. You've been in 20 of these things. They haven't. Norman Powell hasn't been in one. What did I think about Wemby and CP3's trick at the skills challenge? I talked about it on yesterday's pod. I thought it was embarrassing. It was kind of funny. CP3, embarrassing for the league, and maybe those guys too. I think Wemby made up for it with his play today, but CP3 looking for any advantage he can get. Trying to cut corners. As many have pointed out, it's on brand. He's corrupting Wemby, guys. I still got love for CP3. It was funny. I thought it was interesting that the league would not let Ali LaForce, who's there as the reporter for TNT, talk to Chris Paul on the bench, while he was adamant that it wasn't outside of the rules, and a league official had to come over with the rule book, show it to him, that what they did was wrong. I thought it would have been funny and entertaining if we could have gotten that interview. But I guess the league didn't want to highlight the low light, if you will, bring any more attention to it because it was kind of shameful. I mean, the very first event, the very first two guys out there were Wemby and CP3, and they're just underhanded and throwing balls off the rack as quick as possible with absolutely zero intent on trying to make a shot. LeBron was there. They did show him. Where were you? He took the team pick. Guys, he went through the introductions. I don't know if he stayed around after that, but he was definitely there. He said he was going to fly back tonight to LA, get treatment. I'm fine with prioritizing the Lakers season and meaningful games over an exhibition game. It's just the issue of, if you knew you weren't going to play, give up your spot to somebody that has earned it, that would love to play, that would love to be an all-star. And if he told the league and they said, well, we have to keep it quiet because we don't want advertisers and everybody to know that LeBron James is not going to be available on Sunday, they still could have told Norman Powell, put it on the DL, but or keep it on the DL, be available on Sunday. LeBron's not going to be, or they don't even have to tell LeBron. There will be a player unavailable. You're going to be the replacement. You'll be an all-star. There are ways to do this. There are solutions. And they just, man, they botched this in some ways, in many ways. So game one, we got Chuck versus Kenny. Wemby's out there blocking Cade. But when one of the GMs of the teams on the court, and when they didn't have their teams playing on the court, I should say, they were announcers too. And a lot of this feels like they were just throwing stuff at the wall last minute, guys. I got to be honest. It did not feel well structured or very professional. So they have Shaq doing commentary the first game because his team's not playing, even though I would much rather have the GMs between them mic'd up while their teams are playing. I think that would have been more entertaining than Shaq talking about Bol, who's not an all-star, because he keeps digging his heels into this bad argument that he's the same as Wemby. It's embarrassing. I'm sure it's embarrassing to Bol at this point. That's great, man. I appreciate you hyping me up. It's getting a little ridiculous. It should be embarrassing for Shaq not knowing the difference between those players. Like, go look at some of the videos from over the years. He has been, well, over the last 2 years, he has been adamant that Bol's just as good. Wemby's not doing anything different than Bol. It's asinine. And that's why I say there's a difference between playing the game like he did and knowing the game and being able to talk the game. Those are all three different things. Because I've seen a lot of guys who played the game. I don't know it. There's one example, or they can't talk it. I guess he can talk, I suppose. I don't know if he's saying anything very informative. Kevin Hart comes out. He's the big secret MC. He didn't say anything that funny to warrant his presence to me. He also was talking about, I want guards being guards and centers and bigs being bigs. And it's like, no, we're not going backwards. We're pushing forwards, where big guys can move like guards, and that's impressive. And they're that skilled out there to be able to shoot. But I don't know what I expected from him. I guess jokes that were funny, and there weren't many. The commentary was just distracting and was rarely talking about what was actually happening on the court. That was annoying. So Shea won the first game, the international guys, with a dunk against Kenny's young guys who didn't have Anthony Edwards on the team. Anthony Davis was out for, I think, was he one of the OGs? I can't remember. Obviously out. Then the in-between first and second game bit was Mr. Beast comes out for the $100,000 shot that the kid eventually hit, where he just needed to hit one from logo Lillard range, while Dame has to hit 3. Dame was obviously missing some on purpose to give the kid more time. And it took a long time, an awkwardly long time, where Mr. Beast, and I'm not very aware of this guy, maybe I'm getting old. I didn't think his work on the microphone was very special, but the kid actually hit the shot as the buzzer went off. Everybody freaked out, but the damage had probably been done at that point. It had taken way too long to get there. And then we find out, oh, Anthony Edwards was out that first game with the groin injury. Again, it's a groin injury. I don't think he got it last night. He knew he wasn't playing. You could have had injury replacement guys. 2 guys out for the Western Conference. 2 spots open. Boom. Norman Powell, Domantas Sabonis would have gladly loved to be all-stars this season. Then it goes back outside with Draymond cooking the Rising Stars for getting to be on the court. Draymond was doing probably big damage to the NBA brand. He didn't seem to care. I think he's a broadcasting free agent because he's been, I don't know, a consultant with TNT. He's been an announcer with them. He's been an analyst at times, spot analyst when they're out of the playoffs. Draymond comes and hangs with the guys, and he's good. I haven't listened to his podcast much, but his delivery is strong. He made some real strong statements, including one about the Golden State Warriors winning the championship this season. I think he got caught up in the hype a little bit because of where he was at in San Francisco. But he destroyed the idea of the guys winning the Rising Stars competition on Friday being able to go up against the All-Stars on Sunday on that court. He hated it. He hates the new All-Star format. He said it sucks. He was asked on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put the format? And he said 0. And then he pointed out something I think that was smart. While he was going after the history of the All-Star game and talking about how, not going after, but he was laying out the history of the All-Star game records, who has the most MVPs. It's Kobe Bryant. Who has the most scoring, most points scored at All-Star games. I think it's also Kobe, hence the All-Star MVP award, which was that still the case tonight? Did Steph win the Kobe Bryant All-Star MVP award, or was it something different? That better not change, because I do think that was very appropriate, naming that after the late, great Kobe Bryant now. But whether or not you agree with Draymond about the records and scoring records in an All-Star game being relevant or significant, he did say this quote: "You work all year to be an All-Star, and you get to play up to 40 and you're done? This is so unfair." That target score of 40. It underscores how quickly the games were going by. Then we get the Kevin Hart asking Shaq why he's dressed as a porn director. That was the funniest moment, but I don't know if that was frowned upon by the NBA because it's supposed to be, game for the kids too. A nice family restaurant. If you're a Big Lebowski fan. Game 2 was Shaq versus Candace and the Rising Stars. And this was probably the best game. And it got interesting. It got tight at the end. Guys were playing pretty hard. There was one point where Jaylen Brown had a steal, and then Keontae George had one on the other end. Like, they were playing defense. The end of the game got competitive. Kevin Durant got hacked as they needed 1 point, I think, to get to 40. And they didn't call it, the officials, even though they called an 8-second violation in the final game on Steph at the end. They didn't call if he got fouled twice hard. They didn't want the game to end like that. Eventually, Dame hit a 3 to win it. The Rising Stars seemed to bring out a little bit more of a competitive edge with the OGs team there, not wanting to be embarrassed. But I did start to think about how fast the games were going. And, 3 mini games does not equal 1 full game. It doesn't. That's one of the conclusions I came to with this format. The final game, Steph started things off with a floater from 3. A runner, a one-handed runner from 3, which was insane. And The OGs get up on the international star team, Chuck's team, 11-1. They call timeout. It goes to commercial break. They have this long, bloated TNT tribute on the Jumbotron. And then they have them at half court trying to create this like standing ovation, lifetime achievement award, unnecessary celebration to this degree at this time. Time and place, guys, please. That took 10 minutes. Again, the game had started. They could have done this after E40 and Too Short performed in between games, and that would have made sense. The game had started. These are professionals. Jaylen Brown is going like, okay, let's go. He said, we check ball. We need to go here. You can't let these guys warm up, cool down, warm up right away again. That's how injuries happen. That was borderline reckless. It was. Somebody said, quote, Kevin Hart, and this was on X, Kevin Hart, Chuck, and Shaq getting 100 times more airtime than Jalen Brunson and Cade Cunningham on All-Star Saturday night speaks volumes. All-Star Sunday night speaks volumes about how badly the NBA markets their product. Kevin Hart, Chuck, and Shaq getting 100 times more airtime than Jalen Brunson and Cade Cunningham on All-Star Sunday night speaks volumes about how badly the NBA markets their product. I liked it. They're right. The game was in the background. The foreground was everything else. Steph hit a half-court shot before the game was over. Kyrie shook Wemby, which was a great play. Missed the layup, but it was fun one-on-one interaction. There were a lot of good, fun highlights that weren't underscored by the broadcast team for the most part because they're talking about something else. Somebody else said, quote, the actual game's been so good, man, which is why it's been disappointing to see it diluted with all these commercials and gimmicks. The games were actually decent. Honestly, relative to All-Star games, if you packaged all those plays and the defense that was out there into a real 48-minute game, this would have been one of the better All-Star games. But it's getting chopped up, sliced up, minimized, diminished by all the surrounding stuff to stretch it to a 3-hour program when the target scores are 40. Here's an idea somebody had. And before I get to that, there were a couple other good posts on Twitter that resonate with me. Somebody said, quote, the NBA has fixed the problem. The game itself is entertaining because the players are taking it a bit more serious. The problem is we've been here for 3 hours and we've watched maybe 30 minutes of basketball. That's how it felt. I don't know what the final numbers were, but that's how it felt. Somebody else said the format works if you get rid of the hour of non-basketball between everything. Somebody else said the NBA stumbling into a good new format and ruining it by barely showing any basketball is so on brand for them. Perfectly put. Somebody else pointed out how the old heads are saying the All-Star game used to mean more. And this is a fair comment because I do think a lot of the nostalgia is overblown for past All-Star games. And it's summed up with this. Somebody said the All-Star game, they put it in quotes, used to mean more, which is citing what a lot of people are saying. And he responded to that going, yeah, man, you're 35 with a mortgage now. It's okay to let go. It's like, when I see old guys talking about back in their day in the game and how much better it was, first of all, I don't believe any of that stuff because you can go back and watch tape, and I don't think it was better. But A lot of that is because everything in your life was better. You were at your prime. So you felt like everything else was. The music you listened to, the movies, the game. It's called Golden Age syndrome. Romanticizing the past. It happens. I'm guilty of it. But I have gone back to watch former All-Star games just to compare level of competitiveness, defense, how serious they took it. And it has eroded. It has deteriorated to a point where at times where I felt like it's pretty unwatchable. Now, maybe if I was a kid still, I wouldn't care. Maybe. But I can objectively say, as much as I love the modern game, the All-Star game at times has really turned into parody of what it was. Not always. The 2020 game was really good. The 2022 game was pretty good. LeBron game winner in Cleveland. Not always. But I think the NBA wants to hold on to as much of that competitive integrity of the game they used to have as they can without it just totally deteriorating into something else. Somebody brought up, and these are a couple of ideas that I'll get to here in a second for how to fix it. But somebody made this point, quote, the NBA is deeply lost on who their fan base is. They want youth viewers who don't even watch TV, and they want reality TV show addicts. But this game is yet another example that they have forsaken actual basketball fans. They kind of have. And as much as I like the TNT guys and as entertaining as they are, they don't love basketball anymore. They don't love this level of basketball. I'd much rather listen to Tim Legler actually talk basketball, talk the game, mind the game. Hey, it was a good podcast with JJ and LeBron. They're actually talking about the game. It's not hot takes. It's not shitting on the game and how much better things were back in the day, and they weren't. They have, in some ways, forsaken actual basketball fans. They're going after something different, it seems like at times. Let the basketball product stand on its own, celebrate it, celebrate how crazy the shooting has gotten in this league with the high degree of difficulty shooters we have now. It's never been better. Guys have never been more skilled. It's not because defense has gotten so much worse. It's because defenses are so effing compromised because of how much ground they have to cover due to the shooting out there. That's the difference. So point this stuff out. Highlight that. Just how ridiculous the shooting is. I know they do it to an extent with Steph, but there's way too much backlash, and they're letting Shaq, Kenny, and Chuck really become opinion shapers for people too often. When they hate on the game, other people go, yeah, they must know. Those were some of my favorite players growing up, so they must know, yeah, it sucks now. If they're saying it sucks, I got to believe it sucks. I don't think that's good for the game. They don't watch games. They don't know the modern game very well. They exhibit that all the time. And yet they're shaping opinions or poisoning the well, or I forget if that's the argumentative fallacy I'm looking for. They are creating biases. Like, go into it objectively and go back and watch. Those who think the 90s was the peak of basketball, I would encourage you to stop just watching highlights and watch full games. It doesn't look the way you remember it. I always bring up this example, but it's like one of those movies you loved as a kid that doesn't hold up later on. A lot of things are tested by time. Doesn't mean we didn't have great times watching it. Just means things advance. It's okay. Doesn't mean there weren't great players back then. But the game, it has gotten better in many ways. Maybe it's not perfect for you, but to act like it's not still great or shouldn't be celebrated, and to always go back to, in my day, we did it this way. That stuff that you get from TNT, I think, is damaging. I do. But the NBA also sees how entertaining they are. It's like, well, we kind of have to lean into the entertainment side now because that's what people are drawn to, just how funny these guys are and the eyeballs they bring in that way. And hopefully there's enough spillover into people actually falling in love with the game through guys that seem to hate it now. That's a tough threading the needle type of balance they're going for. Some people, when you're talking about solutions for the All-Star game, are bringing up how you could have a king of the court tournament. All 24 All-Stars participate in a one-on-one tournament until the winner receives $1 million bonus. Best players in the world should be involved every single year. Is $1 million going to be enough to incentivize these guys to do it? I mean, they do it like you watch old Team USA practice footage. I say old because like from 2014, and they're playing King of the Court a lot. Would they do it with all the cameras on them? Would guys risk it? Would it hurt endorsements? That's part of the reason guys don't do the dunk contest. You're going to lose to a G Leaguer? If John Morant goes out there and loses to a G Leaguer, what does that do for his brand? Probably takes a hit. So I don't know if they do that either. What about this? I found this to be very interesting. Now, I'm a little bit biased because Norman Powell was a snub. But someone said, swap out the Rising Stars team with the 8 guys next up in All-Star voting. Call them the All-Snub team. They do not get the All-Star accolade. However, if they win their first-round matchup, they get it added to their resume, and the team they beat loses it. You want to hold on to your All-Star badge? You got to play for it. It's probably pretty unrealistic too, but there may be something there. I'm looking at the comments section now, guys. I'll go back a little bit. I know you guys have been chatting in here and I've been rambling. Appreciate you rolling with me. This is Clippers Talk. I'm Adam Osland. What did James Harden end up with in these games today? Total points and assists. Does anybody know? Does anybody care? Because the games were, I mean, you care about James Harden, but the games were, it's not even that the games were that bad. They just were so short compared to everything else. They were a footnote. That's what was disappointing. I came to watch the basketball games. That is why everyone is there. So he had 3 points in the first game in Team Shaq's win with the OGs with James Harden on it in 8 minutes. Like no one's playing. I guess if you combine minutes in both games, it might be something. So how long? I'm wondering how long these games are. Okay, because you can figure out how long the game is by going to the box score because some of these guys, I think, played the entire game. So that entire first game, or this was the final game. That entire final game, the 41-25 victory for Team Shaq versus Team Chuck, took 11 minutes. 11 minutes on the court. Not even a full quarter. 11 minutes. Because I think Jason Tatum played the entire game, and Steph Curry definitely did, and he was out there for 11 minutes. That's how long it went. That game in on-court time, I'm pretty sure was shorter than the TNT celebration, pat ourselves on the back for 25 years. We're going to ESPN now. I think that was longer than the game in the final of this new format tournament style. That is crazy. That is crazy. Mike Dang said Harden 6 points, 6 assists in both games. He was a plus 28. We're going plus minus and All-Star game. Guys, the game was less than a quarter. I understand they played two of these. So, but you couldn't play 3. There were 3 games total played. The most games you could play in of the 3 were 2. Therefore, you're playing a half of basketball if the other games went about this fast. Let me check. So, the Team Candace game went 13 minutes, so a little bit longer than a quarter. 13 minutes total. The Team Candace lost with the Rising Stars to Team Shaq, 42-35. So that was 13. Now, what about the first game, Chuck versus Kenny? Chuck won 41-32 to advance to the final to eventually lose to Shaq. That game, oh my God. Was it 8 minutes? I'm not seeing anyone playing more than 8 minutes. That game might have only took 8 minutes on the court. 2 commercial breaks? They're matching the total of that game. 8 minutes? I think they only played 8 minutes. That's a disaster. So now we're talking like, okay, 8. If it's 8, 13, 11, let's see. We're missing about 15 minutes of basketball at least, I think. At least. You're probably missing like a quarter and a half of basketball than if they just played a normal West versus East 48-minute game of what we got. And by the way, it's being chopped up and you're getting a half hour between games to get 10 minutes of a game? That's crazy. With 2 commercials in it. That's so bad. That's just a bad product. I'm sorry. I love the modern NBA, Adam Silver. This is not an all-star game. This is not good enough. We have to do better. Now, they might come out and say, hey, next year, target score 60 instead of 40. I just don't know. How did you think? Who could have said 40 points is enough in a game that's not going to have as much defense when teams every night, there's probably a team going for a 40-point quarter? You're saying LeBron didn't think the Rising Stars deserved to play on Sunday? Or you're inferring something because he didn't want to play? Like, other players are really taking that to heart, that the Rising Stars got to play on Sunday. I mean, obviously Draymond did. Like, that's really a privilege to be able to play on Sunday and they shouldn't have been out there. If that's how a bunch of the players feel, okay. That makes sense to me. But those same players put us in a spot where they're trying to tweak the format every year to make it more interesting. If it was, I'll give them an extra 2 minutes. I think if it was, this may be generous, but if it was 34 minutes of actual basketball played on the court, divided up in 3 games, that's not good enough. We're missing out on like 15 minutes of ball. But again, what I said earlier, 3 mini games do not make a full game. I don't even think 4 would. Like, it's just not the same. It cheapens it. It doesn't feel right. Now, you could say them not playing hard enough cheapens it too. My point is, I think the guys put together a decent product. The way it was presented was pretty poor. The guys played hard enough. There were plenty of defensive plays today. Honestly, go back and watch. There was still 1-on-0s. There was still some bad defense, but there was enough where they could have put together a quality all-star game if the format wasn't just so sliced up. Man, disappointing. Disappointed for Norm. I need more on what happened. I need more on what happened. Like, LeBron, when did you know? Did you tell the league or not? We'll probably never get the answers to these things, but either LeBron didn't tell the league and he just bowed out an hour before the game, which would lead me to believe that it's almost like he's trying to stick it to the league for something. I don't know why he'd want to stick it to the league. They just got Luka Doncic. But maybe he didn't like the format. He thought it was beneath him. But come on, again, there's got to be some culpability for the way a lot of these all-star games have gone. These are the guys who are responsible for the league trying to make it more entertaining and more interesting and more competitive. So they're trying to change the format to something that you didn't like because the way you were treating the last format that we had forever wasn't up to par, wasn't up to snuff. Jaylen Brown was playing hard. There were a lot of guys who respected the game today. I mean, we already knew Giannis was out too, which hurts because Giannis was somebody who would play hard at times in all-star games. I've taken note of that. So LeBron either didn't tell the league, which means he was either trying to I don't know why he'd wait that long. If he didn't tell the league, maybe he thought he was doing them a solid. Hey, I'm not going to put it out there on Friday night that I'm not playing on Sunday, or on Thursday night I'm not playing on Sunday. Maybe that's me, trying to help out the league, because I think he does want to do that. If you listen to him on Christmas when we had some good basketball games and he declared that, the NFL playing today was cool and there were some bad NFL games, but they're trying to take over Christmas Day. But he said Christmas is our day in the NBA. So he was sticking up for the league there. But the other side of this is, if LeBron knew that he wasn't going to play, man, why didn't you give up your spot earlier? Why didn't you give it to somebody else? Norman Powell was just in the three-point contest. He's already in town. Sabonis wasn't. To my knowledge, he wasn't there. Norman's there. He was already coming for the three-point contest. That's kind of another part of this. I think that would have been the right thing to do. Maybe he genuinely didn't know if he was going to play and it was a game time decision. If you really don't know if it's that close, just bow out, give it to somebody else. And if he did tell the league and they wanted to keep it under wraps because they wanted to promote that LeBron is going to be playing on Sunday and let the promos run with LeBron in them, I understand that from a business perspective, but they still could have told Norman Powell, hey, I know you only put up 14 in the three-point contest, and that was disappointing. Guess what? You're playing in the All-Star game. You're a damn All-Star. They could have done that. Even while keeping it quiet that LeBron wasn't going to play on Sunday, they could have told Norm, guess what? Dream realized. You're going to be playing. You're the fill-in for LeBron. Don't tell anyone. You're playing tomorrow. Ways to handle it better. I don't understand it. I don't. There are better ways to go about this. The All-Star game, handling guys being out. It wasn't just LeBron. Anthony Edwards was out. A groin injury. Another Western Conference guy. And nobody knew till after his team played the game and he didn't play in it. It's crazy. Clipper Stock is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest way to play fantasy sports, and it's available in over 30 states. All you got to do is pick higher or lower on your favorite player stats or least favorite player stats, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Make picks, win money. And I got a free promo code for you guys that will give new users a free pick and up to $1,000 in bonus cash. The promo code is LAC, and you can find it and the referral link in the description down below in this very episode. See, there are ways to give you, an hour or 20 minutes of content with just one 30-second read in there, and you don't feel like you got gypped, right? Today, more product placement commercials than by far than basketball out there. It wasn't even close. The ratio was way off. I don't know. LeBron also not putting on a jersey or a jumpsuit and just playing along like Giannis did. Giannis still had on the uniform. That was weird. Appreciate you guys. Sorry, a lot of ranting. Had to get that off my chest. Mac McClung was the best part of the entire weekend. A G Leaguer. He's on a two-way with Orlando. Show him love. That guy gets it. Like, he wanted to come out and put on a show. He did. Third straight year. I think he's played 3 games this season for Orlando. But I've been saying for like 15 years, just get the team flight guys out there, the professional dunkers. They do it better. Just have them, or have them train with NBA guys and have them like team up with each NBA guy also is next to a guy from team flight. So it is like a combo duo thing with your score in the dunk contest. There are just so many ways to do this better. And I love the NBA. I love basketball. I want to see them nail it and get this right. And I really want to see them get it right because next season it's an Intuit Dome. And I'm excited about that. And I want a great all-star event. So we'll see what happens with the format, what changes next. It's been fluctuating. Will they continue to change things up? I don't know. But there's got to be a better way. I think we've given a few different solutions or ideas. We'll see what happens. Everybody be good. I'm Adam Osland. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We ain't taking any days off during the All-Star break just because the Clippers aren't back till Thursday. We will talk tomorrow. Maybe I'll have La Murray on because he was up in San Francisco. Run some stuff by him. Maybe get the lowdown on what the situation was with LeBron and not playing. I'm Adam Osland. You've been listening to another edition of Clippers Talk.